British planes targeted Islamic State oil fields in Syria following the House of Commons vote Wednesday in an effort to cut off a key source of funding for the terrorist group. Islamic State's oil fields in Syria bring in millions of dollars, which the group uses to curry favour with local tribes, buy weapons and pay for the day-to-day running of cities such as Mosul and Raqqa. Tom Keatinge is director of the Centre for Financial Crime and Security Studies at the Rusi think tank in London. He says cutting off ISIS oil resources is not simply about bombing oil fields.
There are basically three main sources. There's the oil, there's the local tax on businesses, people and tolls, and then there's other. And other is also relatively internal, whether it's antiquities, kidnap for ransom and so on. So if you really want to cut off their funding, you've got to either stop people and businesses from paying tax, or you've got to disrupt the oil. I don't know whether finally the pennies dropped, or I'm not quite sure why suddenly 2 weeks ago the bombing of oil fields and oil infrastructure started to become popular. They've been there for the last year, 18 months. It's not like we've only just discovered them. The downside of having waited for 12, 18 months is, of course, ISIS has had 12 to 18 months of opportunity to raise money through the sale of oil and using those oil assets. The consistent numbers are about $3 million a week from oil. So that's a significant reduction from 12 to 18 months ago, partly because the price of oil has dropped precipitously since ISIS first expanded in Syria and Iraq. I think there are three sources, or there are three destinations for the oil that comes out of ISIS-controlled territory. There's the traditional smuggling routes into Turkey. Those smuggling routes have been there for decades. It's just that we only now have started to care about the people who are making money out of those smuggling routes. That's Islamic State. Secondly, there's the Assad regime. I think that's pretty clear that that is a market for ISIS-originated oil. But thirdly, there are anywhere up to 8 million, maybe 5 million people who live in the territory that is controlled by ISIS who need cooking oil. They need fuel for generators, for electrics, etc., etc. So there is a market right there on the doorstep. I think probably the reason that we've waited as long as we have done is that there was a reticence amongst the coalition air forces to destroy infrastructure that would be a critical part of regenerating those regions once Islamic State had been pushed out. If you believed 12, 18 months ago that you were going to push Islamic State out of that territory by Christmas 2014, then you can understand why you wouldn't have destroyed infrastructure that you would have relied on as part of the rebuilding effort. These truck drivers they are local people. This is their livelihood. And do we really want to go upsetting the local people by destroying their livelihood, or worse still, killing them? I get the impression that patience has run out, and we'll warn tanker drivers, etc., that this is going to happen, and hope that they get out of the way. We are taking jobs away from local people, and how will they react? What will their impression of the coalition led by the US? What will their impression of that coalition be when their job is gone? When their tanker, which they've bought with their life savings, etc., etc., when those have gone, how will they react to the international communities? How damaging has the delay been, and to what extent will we regret having trodden so softly over the last 12 to 18 months as it relates to the only part of their financing which we can strangle? That's the oil revenue.